Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I stepped through the front door of our suburban home, the weight of another long day at work falling from my shoulders. The familiar scent of lavender air freshener greeted me, along with the sound of cartoons from the living room. Dad's home. I called out, a smile spreading across my face as I heard the patter of little feet racing towards me. My daughter, Emma, launched herself into my arms. I scooped her up, planting a kiss on her cheek. "How's my little princess? I drew you a picture at school today." She wriggled out of my grasp and darted off to retrieve her masterpiece. My son, Jake, appeared in the hallway, his eyes glued to his handheld game. "Hey, Dad," he mumbled, barely looking up. I ruffled his hair as I passed. "Hey, champ, how was school?" "Fine," he shrugged, disappearing back into the living room. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Teenagers. Wilson, is that you?" Kara's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Yeah, honey. I'm home," I replied, loosening my tie as I made my way towards her voice. Kara stood at the stove, stirring a pot of what smelled like her famous spaghetti sauce. She turned, offering me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was work?" I leaned in to kiss her cheek, but she turned her head slightly, my lips grazing her jaw instead. Same old, same old. How about you?" "Oh, busy with the kids, errands, the usual," she said, her tone oddly dismissive. I frowned, sensing something off in her demeanor. "Everything okay?" "Of course," she replied quickly. Too quickly. Why wouldn't it be? Before I could press further, Emma bounded back into the kitchen, thrusting a colorful drawing into my hands. "Look, Daddy, it's our family." I examined the crayon masterpiece, my heart swelling with pride and love. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. We'll hang it on the fridge right away." As I placed the drawing on the refrigerator, securing it with a magnet, I noticed Kara's phone on the counter. It buzzed, the screen lighting up with a text notification. "Wesley, can't wait to see you tonight." Same place? My blood ran cold. I glanced at Kara, but she was focused on the stove, oblivious to the message. I quickly memorized the name before the screen went dark again. "Dinner's almost ready," Kara announced. "Why don't you go get changed?" My mind racing. "Sure, I'll be right back." As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my perfect life began to crumble around me. Wesley? Who the hell was Wesley? And why was he meeting my wife tonight? I changed out of my work clothes on autopilot, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. I'd always trusted Kara implicitly. We'd been married for 15 years, built a life together, raised 2 beautiful children. How could she do this? At dinner, I watched Kara closely, searching for signs of guilt or deception. She chatted with the kids, laughed at their jokes, but there was a tension in her shoulders, a nervousness in her eyes when she glanced my way. "So, any plans for tonight?" I asked casually, twirling spaghetti around my fork. Kara's hand faltered slightly as she reached for her glass of water. "Oh, I thought I might go out with some girlfriends. Have a little ladies' night." The lie stung more than I expected, forcing a smile. "Sounds fun. Which friends?" "Oh, just the usual crowd. Sarah, Lisa, she waved her hand dismissively. I knew Sarah and Lisa. I also knew they were both out of town this week. The deception cut deep, but I maintained my composure. "Well, have a good time," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. After dinner, I retreated to my home office under the guise of catching up on work. In reality, I was doing some investigating of my own. I scoured our bank statements, looking for any suspicious transactions. What I found made my stomach churn. There were regular withdrawals from an account I didn't recognize, always in cash. The amounts varied, but they were substantial. How long had this been going on? I heard Kara moving around upstairs, getting ready for her night out. My jaw clenched as I thought about where she was really going, who she was really meeting. When she came downstairs, she was dressed to kill. A little black dress I'd never seen before, heels that made her legs look a mile long. My heart ached at the sight of her. "Don't wait up," she said, grabbing her purse. "I might be late." I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. As soon as the front door closed behind her, I sprang into action. I grabbed my keys and followed her, keeping a safe distance. Kara drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, pulling into the parking lot of an upscale hotel. I watched from across the street as she entered the lobby, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. A few minutes later, a sleek sports car pulled up. A man stepped out, tall and handsome in an obvious way. He swaggered into the hotel like he owned the place. Wesley McDowell, I presumed. I sat there for hours, my mind conjuring images of what was happening inside that hotel room. When Kara finally emerged, her hair slightly mussed and her lipstick touched up, I felt something inside me harden. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a deliberate, ongoing betrayal. I drove home, arriving well before Kara. I went through the motions of getting ready for bed, my mind already formulating a plan. When Kara slipped into bed beside me, reeking of expensive cologne that wasn't mine, I pretended to be asleep. But sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Kara had no idea what was coming. Neither did Wesley McDowell. They would both regret the day they decided to cross Wilson Fernandez. The next morning, I rose before dawn, my mind clear and focused despite the lack of sleep. Kara was still soundly asleep, no doubt exhausted from her nocturnal activities. I resisted the urge to wake her, to confront her with what I knew. No, that would come later. For now, I had work to do. I showered and dressed for work as usual, maintaining the facade of normalcy. As I sipped my coffee in the kitchen, I heard the kids stirring upstairs. Emma's cheerful voice drifted down, followed by Jake's grumbling response. Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile. They were the reason I had to handle this situation carefully. They were innocent in all of this, and I would protect them at all costs. "Morning, Dad," Emma chirped, bounding into the kitchen. Her pigtails bounced as she climbed onto a stool at the counter. I ruffled her hair affectionately. "Morning, Princess. Sleep well?" She nods enthusiastically, launching into a detailed account of her dreams. I listened, marveling at her innocence, her trust. How could Kara risk all of this? Jake slouched in next, his eyes barely open. "Is there coffee?" he mumbled. I chuckled, pouring him a small cup. "Here you go, champ. But don't tell your mother." He grunted in response, but I caught the ghost of a smile on his lips. Kara appeared last, looking fresh and well-rested. If I hadn't known better, I would never have guessed at her late-night rendezvous. She moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, preparing breakfast for the kids. "Morning, everyone," she said brightly. "Wilson, don't forget we have that parent-teacher conference this afternoon." My face a mask of normalcy. "Right, of course. I'll meet you there." As I left for work, I kissed the kids goodbye and pecked Kara on the cheek. The routine felt hollow now, tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. But I played my part perfectly. Let her think everything was fine. Let her believe she had me fooled. At work, I went through the motions, my mind elsewhere. During my lunch break, I made a call to a private investigator I'd found online. Harold Lindsay came highly recommended for his discretion and thoroughness. "Mr. Fernandez," Harold's gruff voice came through the phone. "What can I do for you?" I laid out the situation, keeping my voice low and steady. "I need concrete evidence. Bank records, photos, anything you can get." "Understood," Harold replied. "I'll get started right away. But I have to warn you, Mr. Fernandez, this kind of investigation, it can be tough. You want to know everything?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." After work, I met Kara at the school for the parent-teacher conference. Ms. Johnson, Emma's teacher, gushed about our daughter's progress. "Emma is such a joy to have in class," she said, beaming. "So bright and eager to learn." I swelled with pride, glancing at Kara. She smiled, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? Whatever it was gone in an instant. As we left the school, Kara's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression changing subtly. "Oh, I almost forgot. I have a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up for dinner, okay?" My jaw clenching slightly. "Sure, no problem." That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in my office, poring over financial records, I discovered several hidden accounts, all in Kara's name. The amounts were staggering. How long had she been siphoning money away? And for what purpose? My phone buzzed with a text from Harold. Got some intel. Meeting set for tomorrow. I replied with a simple confirmed, my heart racing. This was it. The beginning of the end for Kara's deception. The next day, I met Harold in a nondescript coffee shop across town. He slid a manila envelope across the table. It's all there, he said gruffly. Bank statements, photos, even some recorded conversations. Your wife's been busy, Mr. Fernandez. I opened the envelope with steady hands, my eyes scanning the damning evidence. Photos of Kara and Wesley at various locations. Bank statements showing large transfers to offshore accounts. Transcripts of phone calls filled with intimate details and future plans. There's more, Harold said, his voice low. This Wesley character, he's bad news. Got a record. Fraud. Mostly. Looks like he's got your wife wrapped around his finger. Absorbing the information. Thank you, Harold. You've done excellent work. Kara wasn't just having an affair. She was planning something bigger, something that could destroy our family, our future. And Wesley, he was using her, manipulating her for his own gain. I drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. I needed a plan, a way to confront Kara that would leave her no room for denial or manipulation. And I needed to protect my children from the fallout. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Kara through the living room window. She was on the phone, laughing and gesturing animatedly. Probably talking to Wesley, I thought bitterly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The calm was over. The storm was about to break, and I would be the one controlling its fury. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in days. The weight of Kara's betrayal still pressed heavily on my chest, but it was now accompanied by a steely determination. Today, I would set my plan in motion. I went through my morning routine as usual, kissing the kids goodbye and nodding curtly to Kara before heading out. But instead of going to work, I drove to the office of Bruce Wilkins, a divorce attorney known for his aggressive tactics and high success rate. Bruce's office was sleek and modern, a testament to his many victories. He greeted me with a firm handshake, his piercing blue eyes assessing me critically. Mr. Fernandez, he said, gesturing for me to sit. What can I do for you today? I laid out the situation, my voice steady and controlled. I need to know my options, Bruce. I want full custody of my children, and I want to make sure my wife doesn't walk away with a dime she doesn't deserve. Bruce's expression grave. I see. And you have evidence of her infidelity? I pulled out the manila envelope Harold had given me, sliding it across the desk. Everything's in there. Bank statements, photos, recorded conversations. She's been siphoning money into hidden accounts for months. Bruce whistled low as he flipped through the documents. This is quite damning, Mr. Fernandez. With this evidence, we have a strong case for both the divorce and custody. Good, I said, leaning forward. Because I'm not just looking to end my marriage, Bruce. I want to make sure Kara and her lover can't hurt my children or take advantage of anyone else ever again. Bruce's eyebrows rose slightly, but he shook his head. I understand. We'll need to move quickly and decisively. Are you prepared for how ugly this might get? I met his gaze unflinchingly. I'm prepared for anything. My children's future is at stake. We spent the next hour outlining a strategy. Bruce advised me to gather any additional evidence I could, especially anything that might paint Kara as an unfit mother. He also suggested I secure my personal finances and start documenting all interactions with Kara. As I left Bruce's office, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for the end of my marriage, anger at Kara's betrayal, but also a fierce determination to protect what was mine. I drove home, my mind racing with the next steps of my plan. I needed to confront Kara, but I had to do it in a way that left her no room for manipulation or denial. When I walked through the front door, I found Kara in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "You're home early," she said, her tone cautious. My expression neutral. "We need to talk, Kara." She froze for a moment, then slowly put down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. "Okay," she said slowly. "What about?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I know about Wesley. The color drained from Kara's face. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. But then her shoulders slumped in defeat. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Long enough, I replied, my tone cold. Long enough to know that this isn't just some fling. You've been planning something, haven't you? Something that involves a lot of money. Kara's eyes widened in shock. Wilson, trust me, you got it wrong. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Save it, Kara. I've seen the bank statements. I've seen the photos. Hell, I've even heard the phone calls. There's nothing you can say that will make this right. Tears welled up in Kara's eyes. Please, Wilson. You don't understand. Wesley, he's not who you think he is. He's been helping me. I laughed bitterly. Helping you? Is that what you call it? Helping you steal from our family? Helping you destroy our marriage? It's not like that. Kara protested, her voice rising. You don't know what I've been going through. No, I don't, I agreed, my voice low. Because you chose to lie and sneak around instead of talking to me. Your husband, the father of your children. Kara flinched at the mention of the kids. The children, they don't know, do they? I shook my head. No, and I intend to keep it that way for as long as possible. But make no mistake, Kara. This ends now. What do you mean? She asked, fear creeping into her voice. I mean that I'm filing for divorce, I said firmly. And I'm going for full custody of the kids. Kara's face crumpled. You can't do that. They're my children too. I can, and I will, I replied, my resolve unwavering. You've made your choice, Kara. Now you have to live with the consequences. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, seeing a message from an unknown number. Stay away from Kara, or you'll regret it. I showed the message to Kara, watching as her face paled. Her eyes widened in recognition, and I knew immediately that the message was from Wesley. Is this how it's going to be, Kara? I asked, my voice low and controlled. Threats now? Kara shook her head frantically. No, Wilson, I swear I didn't know he would do this. I'll talk to him. I'll make him stop. I laughed bitterly. You'll make him stop? You can't even control your own actions, let alone his. Please, Wilson, Kara pleaded. Reaching out to touch my arm, I stepped back, avoiding her touch. We can work this out. For the kids, if nothing else. The kids are exactly why this ends now, I said firmly. I won't have them growing up in a house built on lies and deceit. Kara's face crumpled. What are you going to do? I pulled out my phone, dialing a number. I'm calling my lawyer. We're going to draw up the divorce papers tonight. I suggest you find yourself a good attorney, Kara. You're going to need one. As I spoke to Bruce, arranging an immediate meeting, I watched Kara sink into a chair, her face in her hands. For a moment, I felt a twinge of, not regret, but something close to it. Then I remembered the photos of her with Wesley, the secret bank accounts, the lies upon lies. I'm going out, I told Kara as I hung up the phone. Don't wait up. And don't even think about trying to access any of our accounts. They've all been frozen. Kara's head snapped up, panic in her eyes. You can't do that. How am I supposed to? To what? I interrupted. To funnel more money to your lover? To plan your escape? Those days are over, Kara. Welcome to your new reality. I left the house, Kara's sobs fading behind me. As I drove to meet Bruce, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The storm had broken, and I was still standing. At Bruce's office, we worked late into the night, drafting divorce papers and custody agreements. Bruce was impressed with my preparedness and resolve. Most clients come in here an emotional wreck, he commented. But you, Mr. Fernandez, you're like a machine. I said, I have to be. For my kids. We finished paperwork and I left Bruce's office well past midnight, the divorce papers safely in my briefcase. Tomorrow, Kara would be served. Tomorrow, her world would come crashing down around her, and I would be there to pick up the pieces for my children. As I drove home, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Wesley. You've made a big mistake, Fernandez. Watch your back. I smiled. Let him try. I was ready for whatever came next. The war had begun, and I intended to win. The next morning, I woke early, my mind clear and focused. Today was the day Kara's carefully constructed world would come crashing down. I dressed quickly and quietly, not wanting to wake her. Let her sleep. She'd need her strength for what was coming. As I made coffee, I heard the kids stirring upstairs. Emma's cheerful voice drifted down, followed by Jake's sleepy grumbles. I smiled despite myself. They were the reason for all of this. The reason I had to be strong. "Morning, Dad," Emma chirped, bouncing into the kitchen. "Where's Mom?" "Still sleeping, sweetheart," I replied, ruffling her hair. "How about some pancakes?" Jake slouched in next, his eyes barely open. "Pancakes? I'm in." As we ate breakfast, I tried to memorize every detail. The way Emma's pigtails bobbed as she chattered about her upcoming school play. The way Jake's eyes lit up when I mentioned the new video game I'd bought him. These were the moments that mattered. The moments Kara had thrown away. After dropping the kids at school, I drove to work, my mind racing with the next steps of my plan. I'd arranged for Kara to be served the divorce papers at precisely 10 a.m. By now, the story of her affair would be spreading through our social circles like wildfire. At 10:05, my phone buzzed. A text from our neighbor, Tom. "Wilson, is it true? About Kara? Man, I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. Let the rumors fly. Let Kara feel the weight of her actions." At lunch, I met with Harold, my private investigator. He had more information on Wesley McDowell, and it wasn't pretty. "Guy's got a rap sheet a mile long," Harold growled, sliding a file across the table. "Fraud, embezzlement, even a domestic violence charge that got dropped. Your wife sure can pick him." I nodded, flipping through the pages. "This is perfect, Harold. Thank you. What are you going to do with all this?" Harold asked, eyeing me curiously. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm going to make sure Wesley McDowell never hurts another family again." Back at the office, I received a flurry of texts and calls from Kara. I ignored them all. Let her stew in her own juices for a while. Finally, at 3 p.m., I answered one of her calls. "Wilson." Kara's voice was frantic. "What have you done?" "Everyone knows. I've been fired from my job, and Sarah and Lisa won't even speak to me." "Actions have consequences, Kara," I replied coldly. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." "But the kids," she started, "are my primary concern." I cut her off. "Which is why I filed for full custody. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about that soon." "You can't do this," Kara shrieked. "I'll fight you every step of the way." I laughed humorlessly. "With what money, Kara? Those secret accounts you thought I didn't know about? They've been frozen. Every last cent." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Kara spoke again, her voice was small and defeated. "What am I supposed to do now?" For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You should have thought about that before you decided to throw away our marriage. Goodbye, Kara." I hung up, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was necessary, I reminded myself, for the kids, for our future. That evening, as I prepared dinner for the kids, there was a pounding at the front door. I opened it to find Wesley McDowell, his face red with anger. "You think you can just ruin our lives like this?" he snarled, taking a step towards me. I stood my ground, meeting his gaze coolly. "I didn't ruin anything, McDowell. You and Kara did that all on your own." "Listen, you smug bastard," Wesley growled, jabbing a finger at my chest. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Oh, you'll what?" I interrupted, my voice low. "Threaten me? Hurt me? Go ahead. Give me a reason to add assault to the list of charges I'm bringing against you." Wesley's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in suspicion. "What charges?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, I think you know. Fraud. Embezzlement. Not to mention your little domestic violence problem. Did you really think I wouldn't dig into your past?" The color drained from Wesley's face. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Try me," I replied. "Now, get off my property before I call the police. And stay away from my family." Wesley opened his mouth as if to argue, then thought better of it. He turned and stalked back to his car, peeling out of the driveway with a screech of tires. As I closed the door, I saw Emma standing at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. "Daddy," she said in a small voice. "Who was that man? Why was he yelling?" I climbed the stairs and scooped her into my arms. "Just a confused man, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. How about we finish making dinner?" As we cooked together, Emma's fears seemed to fade. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come, and I was ready for it. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal meetings, hushed phone calls, and tense silences at home. The kids knew something was wrong, but I did my best to shield them from the worst of it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when things took an unexpected turn. I was in my home office, poring over financial documents, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Mr. Fernandez," a gruff voice said when I answered. "We need to talk about your children." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "A friend of Wesley's," the voice replied. "He's not happy with how things are going. Says you need some persuasion." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "If you so much as look at my kids—" "Relax," the voice interrupted. "We're not monsters. But Wesley wants what he's owed. $500,000, transferred to an offshore account by Friday, or things might get unpleasant." The line went dead. I sat there, my mind racing. This was a new low, even for Wesley. But I'd been prepared for something like this. I immediately called Detective Sarah Reeves, an old friend from college who now worked in the cybercrimes unit. "Sarah," I said as soon as she picked up, "I need your help. It's about my kids." Sarah's voice was all business. "What's going on, Wilson?" I explained the situation, my voice calm despite the rage boiling inside me. "Jesus, Wilson," Sarah breathed. "This is serious stuff. You don't want to go to the local PD with this?" "No," I said firmly. "I trust you, Sarah. Can you trace the call?" "Already on it," she replied. "I'll have a team monitoring your phones and the kids' devices. We'll catch these bastards, Wilson. I promise." After hanging up, I called Bruce, my lawyer. "We need to move faster," I told him. "Wesley's escalating things. I want those custody papers filed today." "Consider it done," Bruce replied. "And Wilson? Be careful. Men like Wesley, they don't play by the rules." "Neither do I said. "Not anymore." That evening, as I helped Emma with her homework, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Got a lead on the caller. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m., usual place." I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, some good news. "Daddy?" Emma's voice pulled me back to the present. "When is Mommy coming home?" My heart clenched. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother had chosen a life of lies over her own family? "Mommy needs some time away right now, sweetheart," I said gently. "But I'm here. I'll always be here for you and Jake." Emma nodded, her little face serious. "I know, Daddy. You're the best." I pulled her into a hug, blinking back tears. This was why I was fighting so hard. For moments like these. The next morning, after dropping the kids at school, I met Sarah at our old college hangout, a dingy diner on the outskirts of town. "The call came from a burner phone," Sarah said without preamble, sliding a file across the table. "But we traced it to a location, an abandoned warehouse on the east side." I flipped through the file, my eyes widening at the information. "This is comprehensive." Sarah smirked. "What can I say? I'm good at my job. But Wilson, this goes beyond a simple divorce dispute. These guys, they're dangerous. You need to let us handle this." I shook my head. "I appreciate that, Sarah, but this is my fight. I need to see it through." Sarah sighed, running a hand through her short hair. "I figured you'd say that. Just be careful, okay? And call me if you need backup." "I mean it." I nodded, grateful for her support. "I will. Thank you, Sarah, for everything." As I left the diner, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Dad, some weird guy was asking about you at school. Said he was a friend of Mom's." I didn't talk to him. My blood ran cold. They were getting bolder, coming after my kids at school. This ended now. I dialed Wesley's number, my voice steel when he answered. "Listen carefully, you piece of shit. You come near my kids again, and I'll destroy you. I've got enough dirt on you to bury you 10 times over." Back off, or I start digging your grave. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, Wesley's voice, surprisingly calm. You've got balls, Fernandez. I'll give you that. But you're playing a game you don't understand. Try me, I growled. Wesley chuckled, the sound sending chills down my spine. Oh, I intend to. See you soon, Wilson. The line went dead. I stood there, my heart pounding. The gauntlet had been thrown. The real battle was about to begin, and I was ready for war. The next few days were a blur of activity. I worked tirelessly, gathering every scrap of evidence I could find against Wesley and his cronies. Sarah and her team provided invaluable support, digging up dirt that even I hadn't known existed. It was time to set the trap. I arranged a meeting with Wesley at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. As I sat waiting, my heart raced with anticipation. This was it, the moment everything would change. Wesley swaggered in, his arrogance palpable. He slid into the seat across from me, a smirk playing on his lips. Well, Wilson, he drawled. Finally ready to play ball? I met his gaze coolly. Something like that. I have a proposition for you. Wesley leaned back, intrigued. I'm listening. I pulled out a USB drive, placing it on the table between us. This contains everything. Bank records, photos, recorded conversations. Enough to put you away for a very long time. Wesley's eyes narrowed. And what do you want in exchange for that little treasure trove? Simple, I replied. You disappear. Leave town. Leave Kara. Leave my family alone. Forever. Wesley laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. You really think it's that easy? That I'll just walk away because you have some files on a stick? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, this is just a copy. The originals? They're in the hands of every law enforcement agency in the state. One phone call from me, and your life is over. The color drained from Wesley's face. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. A single text message was displayed, ready when you are. Wesley's bravado crumbled. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I told you, I said firmly. Disappear. Now. Wesley stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, Fernandez, he snarled. I remained seated, my posture relaxed. Oh, I think it is. Goodbye, Wesley. As he stormed out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. One down, one to go. I found Kara at her sister's house, where she'd been staying since I kicked her out. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair disheveled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Wilson, she said, her voice hoarse. What are you doing here? I held up the USB drive. Ending this, once and for all. Kara's eyes widened in recognition. Is that everything? I confirmed. Every lie, every stolen penny, every sordid detail of your affair. Kara sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. What do you want? She asked, echoing Wesley's earlier question. I want you to sign these, I said, pulling out a stack of papers. Full custody of the kids, division of assets as outlined by my lawyer, and the non-disclosure agreement. Sign these, and I won't release the information on this drive. Kara's eyes darted between the papers and the USB drive. You can't do this, Wilson. They're my children, too. I leaned forward. Children you were willing to abandon for a life with a criminal. Children whose future you gambled away. Sign the papers, Kara. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen. What about visitation rights? Supervised visits, once a month, I replied coldly. That's more than you deserve. Kara's face crumpled, but she nodded. As she signed each document, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This was the end of our family as we knew it, but the beginning of a new chapter for me and the kids. It's done, Kara whispered, pushing the papers back to me. I gathered them up, tucking them safely into my briefcase. Goodbye, Kara. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the visitation schedule. As I turned to leave, Kara called out, Wilson, wait. I'm sorry. For everything. I paused at the door, not turning back. Save your apologies, Kara. They don't mean anything now. I walked out, leaving behind the remnants of my old life. The cool evening air hit my face, and I took a deep breath. It was over. I had one. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. It's done. Wesley's been picked up. Charges are being filed as we speak. I smiled. Justice was being served on all fronts. As I drove home, I thought about the kids. They were safe now, protected from the chaos Kara and Wesley had tried to bring into our lives. It wouldn't be easy, but we would rebuild. We would be stronger for it. I pulled into the driveway, seeing the warm glow of lights from inside the house. Emma and Jake were waiting for me, their faces pressed against the window. This was my victory, not just over Kara and Wesley, but for my children, for our future. I stepped out of the car, ready to face whatever came next. The storm had passed, and we had weathered it together. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as I poured myself a cup of coffee. It had been 3 months since the divorce was finalized, and life was slowly settling into a new rhythm. Dad, Jake called from upstairs. Have you seen my history book? I chuckled, shaking my head. Some things never changed. Check under your bed, champ. Emma bounced into the kitchen, her backpack already on. Daddy, can we have pizza for dinner tonight? I ruffled her hair affectionately. We'll see, princess. Don't you have vegetables to eat first? She wrinkled her nose but nodded. Okay, but only if you make them. As I prepared breakfast, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. The first few weeks after Kara left had been tough. The kids had a lot of questions, and I did my best to answer them honestly without vilifying their mother. Jake trudged into the kitchen, his history book in hand. Found it, he mumbled, slumping into a chair. I placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. Eat up. You've got that big test today, remember? He nodded, picking at his food. Dad, when's Mom coming to visit again? I paused, choosing my words carefully. She'll be here this weekend for your supervised visit. Remember, it's just for a few hours. Emma piped up. Can we go to the park with her? We'll see, sweetheart, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. It depends on what the supervisor says. As we finished breakfast and headed out for school drop-offs, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my boss, reminding me about the big presentation today. With everything that had happened, work had taken a back seat. But now, it was time to refocus. After dropping the kids off, I drove to the office, my mind already going over the presentation points. As I walked into the building, I bumped into someone. Oh, I'm sorry, a soft voice said. I looked up to see a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. No, it was my fault, I replied, steadying her. I wasn't looking where I was going. She laughed, a melodious sound that made me smile. Well, let's call it a draw then. I'm Naomi, by the way. I just started in HR. Wilson, I said, shaking her hand. Nice to meet you, Naomi. As we chatted on the elevator ride up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of interest, of possibility. But I quickly pushed it aside. I had other priorities right now. The presentation went well, better than I had expected. My boss was pleased, hinting at a possible promotion in the near future. As I packed up my things, feeling a sense of accomplishment, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Wilson. Her voice was serious. We've got a situation. Wesley's out on bail. My blood ran cold. How is that possible? I thought the evidence was irrefutable. Sarah sighed heavily. It is, but he's got some powerful friends. Listen, I've arranged for extra patrols around your house and the kids' school, but you need to be careful. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. Wesley was a wild card, unpredictable and dangerous. I needed to be prepared for anything. At home, I found Jake and Emma engrossed in a board game. The sight of them, safe and happy, strengthened my resolve. I would protect them, no matter what. Hey, kids, I called out, forcing cheer into my voice. Who's winning? Emma jumped up, running to hug me. I am. Jake keeps landing on my properties. Jake rolled his eyes but smiled. Pure luck, he muttered. As we sat down to dinner pizza, as promised, I watched my children laugh and argue over trivial things. This was what mattered. This was what I would fight for. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my office, going over security measures. I installed new locks, set up a state-of-the-art alarm system, and even considered hiring a private security team. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't protect them forever, Fernandez." I deleted the message, my jaw clenched. Wesley was trying to rattle me, but I wouldn't let him. I was stronger now, wiser, and I had everything to lose. As I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The man looking back at me was different from the one who had discovered his wife's betrayal all those months ago. This man was harder, more determined, unbreakable. I climbed into bed, my mind still whirling with plans and contingencies. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thought remained clear. I would do whatever it took to keep my family safe. Whatever it took. The weekend arrived faster than I expected, bringing with it the first supervised visit with Kara since the divorce. As I helped Emma pick out her outfit, I could feel the tension building in my chest. "Daddy, will Mommy like this dress?" Emma twirled, her face hopeful. I forced a smile. "She'll love it, Princess. You look beautiful." Jake knocked on the open door, already dressed. "Dad, can I talk to you for a sec?" I nodded, following him into the hallway. "What's up, champ?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Do I have to go? I mean, can't I just stay home?" I knelt down to his level, meeting his eyes. "Jake, I know this is hard, but your mom loves you, and she wants to see you. It's just for a few hours." He nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but you'll be close by, right?" "Always," I promised, pulling him into a hug. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the court-appointed supervisor, a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Patel. I led her into the living room, where Kara was already waiting. The atmosphere was tense as the kids came downstairs. Emma ran to Kara, throwing her arms around her. Jake hung back, offering a stilted, "Hi, Mom." Kara's eyes were red-rimmed, her smile forced. "Hi, kids. I've missed you so much." I cleared my throat. "Remember, you have 3 hours. Mrs. Patel will be with you the entire time. I'll be back to pick them up at 2 p.m. sharp." Kara nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Thank you, Wilson." As I turned to leave, Jake called out, "Dad, wait." I paused, looking back. He ran over, hugging me tightly. "See you soon," he whispered. I squeezed him back. "Have a good time, champ." Those 3 hours were some of the longest of my life. I paced my office, checked my phone obsessively, and even considered driving by the park where they were supposed to be. At 1:55 p.m., I was back at the house, waiting. When Mrs. Patel's car pulled up, I felt a rush of relief. The kids tumbled out, looking tired but okay. "How was it?" I asked as they came inside. Emma launched into a detailed account of their day, while Jake just shrugged. "It was fine," he muttered. Mrs. Patel pulled me aside. "Mr. Fernandez, I need to discuss something with you." My heart rate picked up. "Is everything okay?" She nodded. "Yes, but..." Mrs. Fernandez asked about increasing visitation. I told her she'd need to go through proper channels, but I wanted you to be aware. I thanked her, my mind already racing. Increased visitation? Not if I had anything to say about it. That night, after the kids were in bed, I called Bruce. "We need to be prepared," I told him. "Kara's going to push for more time." Bruce's voice was calm. "We anticipated this, Wilson. Remember, we have the upper hand here. Her past actions work against her." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I know. I can't let her hurt them again." "She won't," Bruce assured me. "We won't let her." The next few weeks fell into a routine. Work, kids, supervised visits every other weekend. I watched Kara carefully during these visits, looking for any sign that she might try to take the kids or turn them against me. But she seemed different, subdued, almost remorseful. One Saturday, after a visit, Jake approached me. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, buddy. What's on your mind?" He hesitated. "Mom," she said she's sorry for everything. Do you think she means it?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Jake, your mom made some big mistakes, but I believe she loves you and your sister very much. Whether she's truly sorry, That's something only time will tell. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As he walked away, I felt a twinge of, not regret, exactly, but a realization that this situation wasn't black and white. The kids still loved their mother, despite everything. That night, I received an email from Kara. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. Wilson, I know I have no right to ask this, but I'd like to meet with you to discuss our co-parenting arrangement. No lawyers, no supervisors, just us, talking about what's best for the kids. Kara, I stared at the screen for a long time, weighing my options. Finally, I replied, Kara, I'll meet you. But understand this, my priority is and always will be protecting our children. If this meeting is an attempt to manipulate the situation, it ends immediately. Wilson, as I hit send, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, still simmering beneath the surface. Wariness, born from months of deceit. But also, a tiny flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to co-parent that didn't involve constant battle. But I wouldn't let my guard down. Not for a second. The kids were counting on me to be strong, to be their protector. And I wouldn't let them down. Not now, not ever. The coffee shop was quiet, just a few patrons scattered around on a Tuesday afternoon. I arrived early, choosing a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. Old habits die hard, I suppose. Kara walked in at exactly 2 p.m., her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Wilson, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded curtly. You said you wanted to discuss co-parenting. So, let's discuss. Kara took a deep breath. I've been in therapy, she began, trying to understand why I did what I did. It's no excuse, I know that, but I want to be better. For the kids. I raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I want to be more involved in their lives, she said, her voice steady. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be a good mother. I leaned back, studying her face. And Wesley? Is he still in the picture? Kara shook her head vehemently. No. God. No. That's over. I see now how toxic he was, how he manipulated me. You allowed yourself to be manipulated, I countered. At the expense of our family. She flinched but nodded. You're right. I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But Wilson, please. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to be there for our children. I was silent for a long moment, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to shut her down, to protect the kids from any further hurt. But another part recognized the pain in her eyes, the genuine remorse. What exactly are you proposing? I asked finally. Kara's eyes lit up with hope. Maybe we could start with unsupervised visits? Just for a few hours at first. And then, if that goes well, perhaps overnight stays every other weekend? I held up a hand. Slow down. Unsupervised visits are not happening anytime soon. But I might be willing to consider extending the supervised visits. If you continue with therapy, and if the kids are comfortable with it. Kara nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. Whatever you think is best. I want to be part of their lives again. As we continued to talk, hammering out details and setting boundaries, I felt a strange sense of, not peace, exactly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. Kara had made terrible choices that had nearly destroyed our family. But she was still the mother of my children. And if there was a chance, however small, that she could be a positive presence in their lives, didn't I owe it to them to try? We left the coffee shop with a tentative plan in place. Longer supervised visits, with the possibility of reassessing in 6 months. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text. It was Naomi from work. Hey Wilson, a bunch of us are grabbing drinks after work on Friday. Want to join? I smiled, a warmth spreading through my chest. Naomi had become a friend over the past few months, her kindness and humor a bright spot in my often chaotic life. Sounds great, I texted back. I'll be there. At home, I found Jake and Emma engrossed in a heated Mario Kart battle. Their laughter filled the room, and I felt a surge of love so strong it almost knocked me off my feet. "Hey kids," I called out. "How about we order pizza and have a movie night?" Their cheers of approval made me laugh. As we settled in for the evening, Emma curled up next to me on the couch. Jake sprawled on the floor with a mountain of pillows. I felt content, happy, even. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, hurdles to overcome. But we were together. We were strong. And we would face whatever came our way as a family. As the movie played, I found myself thinking about the future. About Naomi's kind smile and the way it made me feel. About the possibility of Kara becoming a better mother to our children. About the promotion at work that was looking more and more likely. But I didn't let these thoughts distract me from the present moment. Emma's warm weight against my side, Jake's occasional comments about the movie, these were the things that truly mattered. The next few months passed in a blur of work, school activities, and carefully orchestrated visits with Kara. To my surprise, she stuck to her word. She attended therapy regularly, never missed a visit, and seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding her relationship with the kids. One Saturday afternoon, after a particularly successful visit, Mrs. Patel pulled me aside. "Mr. Fernandez," she said, her usually stern face softening slightly, "I wanted to let you know that I've seen significant improvement in Mrs. Fernandez's interactions with the children. If this continues, I may recommend moving towards unsupervised visits in the near future." I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling in my chest. "Thank you, Mrs. Patel. I appreciate your insight." As I watched Kara say goodbye to the kids, I saw a glimmer of the woman I had once loved. The woman who had been a good mother before everything fell apart. It didn't erase the past, but it gave me hope for the future. At work, things were looking up as well. The promotion came through, bringing with it new challenges and opportunities. And Naomi, well, our friendship had blossomed into something more. Our first date was a simple dinner at a local restaurant. As we talked and laughed, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. "You know," Naomi said, her eyes twinkling, "when I first met you, I never would have guessed you'd been through so much. You always seemed so strong." I shrugged, a small smile playing on my lips. "I had to be. For the kids." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Well, I think you're pretty amazing, Wilson Fernandez." As our relationship grew, I made sure to take things slow, always putting the kids first. To my relief, Jake and Emma took to Naomi almost immediately. "She's cool, Dad," Jake said one evening after Naomi had joined us for dinner. "And she makes you smile more." Emma nodded in agreement. "Yeah, and she helped me with my science project. Can she come over more often?" I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "We'll see, kids. But I'm glad you like her." Months turned into a year, and slowly but surely, our lives settled into a new normal. Kara had progressed to unsupervised visits, and while our relationship would never be what it once was, we had found a way to co-parent civilly. As for Wesley, he had faded into the background. The last I heard, he was serving time for fraud, his past finally catching up with him. On a warm summer evening, I stood in the backyard, watching Jake teach Emma how to pitch a baseball. Naomi was by my side, her hand comfortably entwined with mine. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, nudging me gently. I looked at her, then back at the kids. "I was just thinking, a couple of years ago, I never would have imagined this. Being happy again, having you in our lives. It's more than I ever dared to hope for." Naomi smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "You deserved happiness, Wilson. You and the kids. I'm just glad I get to be a part of it." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the yard, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and hard, filled with betrayal, pain, and countless challenges. But we had made it through. We had emerged stronger, more resilient. "Dad," Emma called out, "come play with us." I grinned, squeezing Naomi's hand before jogging over to join my children. As I picked up the baseball, I realized that this right here, right now, was everything I had fought for. A family, a future, a second chance at happiness. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.